Welcome to the Becoming Body Smart podcast, where we unlock the secrets of sustainable health and fitness and help you master your health habits. If you're tired of quick fixes, generic blueprints, and chasing short-term results, you're in the right place. It's time to become Body Smart.
Welcome. So, today we want to talk about, is it working? Is what I'm doing working?
Is it working? Just
is
it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we talk about the 5 patterns, right? So eating pattern, exercise pattern, sleep, stress, and happiness. Are those 5 patterns working for you in your life? So we wanted to create kind of a, I don't know.
Little check-in checklist.
Yeah, a checklist. Yeah, that's probably a good word for it. Of like, so is this working? Is this thing on? Type of a checklist. So that we can say, like, yeah, we are making progress. Things are going the way we wanted. We're, progressing towards our goals, all those things. And so, yeah, important step in the process of like measuring our success. So we want to talk today about some of those key indicators of whether or not our 5 patterns are leading us in the right direction. The kind of one of the things to think about in the beginning is, I can't say that in the beginning now. There's a video out there. In the beginning. It's pretty funny. He's trying to read the first chapter of the Bible.
Jacob Zuma, I think is it Zimbabwean?
Something
like that.
Yeah, the president of a country in Africa. I can't remember which.
Yeah.
Or prime minister or whatever. Yeah, that's random. Anyway, it's really funny. So now every time I say in the beginning, poor guy just couldn't get it going with the entry or intro to the Bible.
But it was great for our entertainment. So.
It was quite entertaining. Anyway, so in the beginning, I want you to think that progress is really measured more by moments than metrics. So we will list off some metrics that you can measure your success, but it's more about the moments. It's more about the things that you can do, the relationships you have, all of those things. Those things matter so much more than just the metrics of the situation. That being said, there are some metrics that can be helpful in seeing progress. One of the metrics that you won't see on this list is weight lost. Yeah, that's not a key indicator to me. It's a happy side benefit, but not necessarily the goal or one of the key metrics that we look for. Yeah.
So let me, if you didn't get to catch this whole thing, check it out. So I want to actually read from a Geneva post from the other day. So this is what Diane posted in Wins. So I'm going to pull that up.
Thanks, Diane.
Thanks,
Wait,
Diane.
I love when you post in the Wins.
But I thought this was so cool. So she said, I have the craziest couple of days on the schedule while my husband's gone. Like literally planned to the minute for the next 3 days. But I told myself I had to take him to the airport because that's what a good wife would do. Then I realized that meant not getting my workout in or sacrificing a lot of sleep, and I knew that I would not be able to handle the stress of today as well without my workout. So I told my husband to get himself to the airport so I could take care of myself, which of course he totally was fine to do. So I just finished my run, have time to get ready for my day, and feel more in control of how the day will go. Hooray for learning to have limits and say no when I need to. And so that was a moment, right? So Diane has been awesome with doing the workouts and applying all these principles, but how it showed up in this unique moment was so powerful. I asked her to post that because when she told me that, I was just like, bam, that's so cool. I thought that was just incredible for her to have that realization and have that ability to even have that mindset come in. And so it's all about moments like that, right? We're doing the things and the metrics only matter so much as they allow us to change in the direction that's in line with our goals, with our values, with the person that we're trying to become. Metrics for just the sake of metrics, like maybe that looks impressive to someone else, but if it's not actually connected to our deeper why, then it's not going to be sustainable over the long term. And that's really the thing, is that when we begin to experience those moments and we begin to experience them more often, that causes us to reflect and recognize, like, is this how I want to feel? Like, yes, these moments are how I want to feel, or man, I'm having more moments that are not so great.
Right.
Right? And so both can be cues to kind of reevaluate where we're going and to make those course adjustments, right? We're making those little course adjustments that keep us pointed in the direction of where we want to go.
Right. And so those moments can come in a lot of different ways. I think that's a great one of like finding ways to help yourself be more consistent and finding, those keys for your lifestyle. It can be doing something, an activity that you haven't done in the past or haven't done for a while. It can be Christy getting back on the horse. Christy mentioned how she's getting back on the horse. Those are the types of moments that we really want to measure more than anything. That you're able to do the things you love to do again. Those are so much more important than the weight on the scale or things like that.
Well, there was a patient that you were telling me about one time that they said they woke up and they had plantar fasciitis and they woke up and went to the bathroom.
Right. And so I said, normally I lower myself down using my nightstand in the bed and I lower myself to the floor, and those first few steps are just miserable. And this time I rolled out of bed and walked down the hall and went, oh my gosh, like this is amazing. It didn't hurt. I didn't even notice that it didn't hurt, and I was able to walk like normal. And so those are those moments where it's like, oh, I am making progress, or things are getting better. That's what we're talking about. So think about that first. And so one of the first things on our list that we have as far as like the key metrics is relationship quality. And I know that's a little bit nebulous and like hard to measure the quality of your relationships. But as you're making these changes, you should see things getting better in terms of your relationships, that you're more able to connect with those that you love, more able to do the activities that you love with them, things like that. We should see as we are doing those 5 patterns and making subtle changes in those, that it's helping you to connect with people better, that it's helping you to show up and be more present with those who you love, and those things that you want to support or do. And so that's a big one is relationship quality.
Yeah. Well, even just having that on our mind, right? Like it can help us be more aware. Anything that we're just checking in on regularly, that's a word, regularly, we're going to be more aware of. And so as we reflect on the patterns, especially as you go about tracking each of them, right? You're tracking your activity pattern, you're tracking your eating pattern, right? Recognizing some of the habits that support that and that don't. And often people find, right? It's like, oh, I need to have some conversations, right? Or I'm overextending myself, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think recognizing that. So actually, this is interesting. I just had a conversation with someone about being kind-frontational in our relationships.
Oh, I like it.
And it was a really interesting way of thinking about it. Is he said there's a difference between being nice and being kind. And the example was like hilarious. So he said in California, you'll have a flat tire, someone will pull over and say like, "Oh man, like that sucks. Like that's really tough. Well, I hope you get everything figured out," and then they drive off. Right? And then he's like, New York, someone comes and start cussing at you, and why haven't you been taking care of your tires, right? As they get out of their car and they jack your car up and replace the tire, and then they get on their way, maybe they curse you out a little bit more. He said the first person was nice, but they weren't necessarily kind. And the second person wasn't necessarily nice, but they were kind. Right? They actually helped the person in need. And so recognizing that sometimes we feel resistance to show up in our relationships with it may feel confrontational to address an issue or something that's going on, and we think that we're being kind by holding back and not addressing that thing. But what typically happens is that maybe like there's space that grows in the relationship, there's perhaps resentment that grows in the relationship, and in avoiding the confrontation, we actually end up showing up with less love, with less connection over time. And so being confrontational and being proactive about discussing issues and having those heart-to-hearts can really improve the quality of our relationships. And so just taking time to think about that and taking time to do an inventory on our relationships and how our we able to show up, right? And being honest about like where we need to improve. And so often, like Cameron said, if we can improve just simple things like I got a little bit better sleep, or I got more sleep, or I have started to include more activity in my day, right? All of those factors interact. And so when we can reflect and recognize on the areas that need a little bit of adjustment in our lives and work to make those better, then almost always that pays huge dividends in our relationships, right? It gives us more energy so that we can make better decisions and fewer reactions.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Sorry, I was trying to type up that list of our key indicators.
Making
so
like
I can
weird sounds
post
like
it.
now you're playing Atari.
I know, that was weird. I hit the same button too many times and it didn't like it. Anyway, I like that, the confrontational, finding that balance of
And it is a balance, right?
well, that example you used of Diane telling her husband, like, hey, can you get yourself to the airport? Like, there's a way to do that kindly versus, like, I'm sure she wasn't like, no, get your own butt to the airport. Like, that's cutting into my...
How dare you impose
right.
on my time,
Right. I'm sure she did that in a kind and loving way. And that's important that we, whether it's sticking up for ourselves and our time and things like that, that we need to protect to be able to do what we love to do. But doing that in a kind way or helping somebody else out, kind of like your example, I think that's important that we do it in a kind and loving way because that gets reciprocated as well. So, that relationship quality. I think another key indicator then is mindset, that we have more of that. And we talked about that the other day on the call, having the right mindset of kind of this abundance mindset, this cup half full mindset. The future is bright, things are good, and I can make progress. I can see my goals realized. That we keep having that positive mindset, I think, is so critical.
Yeah. Well, this is interesting. I'll have to look up and maybe share this podcast. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and the person was talking about, so he like works in the finance sector, and he talks about how he's still really optimistic about the future. And he said, like, why is that, right? Like, people are gonna, if you tell people that, you're gonna be asked to back it up, right? And what are some of the things? And one of the things that he said is that, like, there's always going to be problems that need solving, and like when there's problems to be solved, that's when people show up and new innovations and new solutions arrive. He said, if we were to always be in so he said, how do you say, like, abundance creates scarcity, which ends up creating abundance again. Mm-hmm. And what he meant by that is it's just like we get this false sense of security when everything's good, and sometimes innovation actually dies because there's no move for it. And so as people just get complacent in what they're doing, right, then you start to have the cycle go downward. But again, like, that drives the innovation, that drives people to come up with solutions. He said one of the reasons why you see all these innovations come from, like, the military, right, out of DARPA, is because, like, there's a pressing need. This problem has to be solved right now.
Right. So I was going to bring that up, is like, not to promote war or anything like that, but many of our greatest technological advances come during a period where we're like at war with another country, and we have to solve a lot of problems, and then those solutions can filter down to civilian life as well. But unfortunately, that is often a period of economic as well as technological growth.
But I think
not ideal to grow that way.
Not ideal to grow, but like understanding that this mindset of, like, it's that glass half full, right? It's like, mm-hmm. Are there going to continue to be wars? Are there going to continue to be major conflicts? Is a lot of bad going to happen? For sure. But also, like, a lot of good will accompany that, and like, that's a very different mindset, right? Mm-hmm. You look at you listen to the news, and it sounds like the world's going to end every day.
Seriously.
And it was interesting. I had a friend say, he's like, if you just didn't listen to the news for a year, like, there's nothing. 99% of it within that year is actually going to affect your life, right? It's actually going to make a difference.
Well, and 99% of it isn't actually informational.
Isn't information, right?
It's not usable information.
And so I'm going somewhere with this, I promise. And so this is what's the type of information and what's the quality of information that we're feeding our brains, right? That's in front of us, because what's in front of us is what we begin to focus on. And so, sometimes the mindset stuff kind of sounds woo-woo, but it's crucial in heading in the direction that we want to go, right? Our brain is a very goal-focused thing, right? And so the thoughts that we're constantly feeding it, the habits that accompany those thoughts, the actions that accompany those thoughts, end up driving us one way or another. And if we don't take care to kind of, we talked about this a couple of weeks, right? Plant flowers and pull out the weeds, then it's just going to be way easier to go into the negative, right? And let that negative mindset kind of color everything that we do and the decisions that we make and how we interact with people, versus as we begin to shift our mindset towards that, like, yes, I can do things, right? Yes, there is hope. Yes, there are good things, right? And I can make changes and I can establish habits. As we begin to shift our mindset in that, we find opportunities showing up, right? We find resistance dropping, and it's easier to establish those habits. And so mindset in the end is really crucial, and yet it still has to be followed up with like action, right?
Yeah,
mindset and action are two sides of the same coin.
Totally. You can have the right mindset, and if you don't take the right actions, it doesn't matter. But I would say so often when people first start working with us, they do have a lot of negative mindsets that are self-limiting beliefs, I guess, where, they have this pile of things that they've failed in the past, diets that they've failed in the past, or tried to, do this with my fitness and blah, 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 blah. So they have this pile of things that they've failed, and they just feel a lack of hope, or injuries that have piled up and things like that. And that lack of hope is really a self-limiting belief, and really cuts into what they can accomplish, because you're holding yourself back before you even get started when you reflect back on the things that you have failed versus the hope of the future. And so that switching that mindset to like, I can see changes, I'm not just this way. So often it's like, oh, I don't like doing this, or I don't I don't like running, or I don't like cardio, or I don't like weightlifting, or I don't like having a fixed mindset about those things and having it be a negative mindset versus a growth mindset really is those self-limiting beliefs. So having that abundance, growth, and glass half full type mindset that you can make changes and become a different new person is so critical to being able to make the changes that we need to make. So that's a good one. Yeah.
With that, I think just notice the language that you use in around what you do. If things like always, never, can't, right? If those are the primary words that are showing up,
absolutes,
right? Any absolutes is probably a good sign that a shift is in order. Versus when it's like sometimes, or we're able to say like, I'm feeling versus I am,
or
right?
Striving.
I'm striving towards this, right?
Right. I'm not good or bad at something, but I'm working on it.
Yeah, so that's a great thing, right? Like, if our first thought is like, oh man, I guess this needs a little more work.
Yeah.
Great. Versus like, oh man, I failed again.
Or I
suck.
Bad at that.
I'm so bad at that.
I hear that all the time, right?
Yeah.
I'm so bad at that. And it's like, well, you don't have to stay bad at it.
Right.
So stop telling yourself you're bad at it. Or so with my kids in sports, they're all the time, they're like, oh, I can't shoot today. It's like, well, now you can't, because you just told yourself that. Instead tell yourself, I got the next one. Like, next one's going in. And will that ball into the hoop instead of, like, oh, I can't shoot today, or I'm just off today. As soon as you tell yourself that, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Like,
oh, absolutely.
You tell yourself that, and you're going to be off.
Yeah.
And so,
that
mindset's so critical.
Yeah, just changing that. And I think another way is so two questions. One, pause and ask yourself, is that thought absolutely true? And more often than not, it probably isn't. Two, take another second to pause and ask yourself, if my best friend was in front of me, would I be saying this stuff to them? How would I approach that?
Or would they want to punch me?
In the face, right? Would I say that to someone that I really care about and that I'm really close with? And chances are, like, a lot of the stuff that we say about ourselves we probably wouldn't say to even people that we don't like that much,
Yeah.
right? If we really stepped back and listened and kind of evaluated the thoughts that we're feeding ourselves. And so just taking those chances to trigger. And so this is just a great key indicator, right?
Yeah.
Am I asking myself those questions more often? Am I shifting out of absolutes and to more empowered language?
Yeah.
And so...
Well, and this kind of speaks to one of the points that's further down about does your future look sustainable? Like, when you look at it, is it overwhelming and like, oh, I don't know that I'm ever going to be able to really do this? Or does it seem and feel sustainable? Is this something that I can do? That's a great key indicator, because if you feel like I can confidently like keep doing what I'm doing right now, that's a good sign. And so that it plays into that mindset for sure, because we want this to be a lifestyle. Again, that's one of the other points. Are you building a lifestyle or just a streak of days where I'm doing this thing for this streak of days, but that implies that I'm going to go off it? So that's why we don't like the 30-day programs or challenges or things like that, because a streak of days is great, but in the end, not very helpful. It didn't move the needle anywhere. It may have pushed it one direction for a little bit, but it's most likely to come back instead of moving the whole, your whole self in the direction that you want to go. And so, yeah, we have to build kind of that right mindset of making progress. And so let's build an entire lifestyle. And so that's another thing you can check in. Am I making shifts in my lifestyle that's more in line with who and how I want to be? Or am I just doing this thing for right now and I've just got a streak of days built up? Again, that's not ideal. So we want to shift from the streak of days, which we kind of have to start that way, right? In building a habit, you have to start building those habits and building those streak of days, but it's got to become part of who you are in your lifestyle at some point in time.
Well, and I think a good way to measure that is your reaction when you miss a day, right? When life isn't ideal, when something pops up, how do you react? Does it shut everything else down? I told this story a couple times on here, but years ago when I first got this watch, it gives you like the little step count.
Yeah.
And every 30 days you get points. And so I was like so close to the 30 days, and I went to bed and I hadn't reached my step goal, and I woke up the next morning and like had a minor meltdown. It's so embarrassing now for me to like think about that, and even a little bit embarrassing to talk about it because it just seems like such a little thing. But there was a lot more underneath that, right? And the thing was, it wasn't like being healthier. It wasn't adopting this as just part of lifestyle. It was like, I've got to do it, right? For my brain. I've got, it's this.
Well, it was a metric, not a moment.
Yeah, it was a metric, not a moment. And so I think that's a really good principle of this is like, okay, well, man, I'm not going to have time for my full workout. Can I just do a walk around the block? Or can I just drop and do a couple of push-ups or do some squats, right? What's my go-to action when life pops up not ideally? And so typically, if we're on that streak of days things, it's going to be a lot more catastrophic, right? It's going to feel way scarier, way more overwhelming. And we're not going to know quite what to do, or we feel really bad about it, right? Shame shows up because I missed my streak. I didn't do it perfect. And so recognizing that it's like, okay, well, how can I modify that? How can I get back on the horse? And it's okay that I fell off because I can get right back on, right? Mm-hmm. When we start to have those thoughts, that's a really good sign that it's shifting towards that lifestyle end of the spectrum.
Right. So Lori says, I had a 1,500 plus day streak on my Apple Watch when it stopped speaking to my phone and I lost the streak. Oh no, that's awful. I was so annoyed, and now it's nice to not be a slave to that stupid streak. So the streaks can be helpful, and that feedback from your watch about getting your steps in can be helpful and motivating and things like that. But at the same time, again, we have to look at what was the purpose of the streak. Did we measure the metric of the streak versus the moments that allowed? By putting together 1,500 days
That's
plus
really awesome.
of active days, it's what that allowed you to be able to do, the life that it gave you, the vitality and the strength and the endurance and all those things that it gave you by having a 1,500 day plus streak. That's incredible. And so that's what you should focus on more, is the life that doing that was able to help you achieve. So it's tough sometimes to think about those things because those metrics like they are fun to watch and things like that. And they can be motivating. But in the end, that's not really the point and not the measuring stick we should use for success. And so, yeah, that's interesting. And it's funny how frustrating that can be. I have before been walking at 11:59 trying to get my steps in.
Oh, I've definitely done that too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Light on in the closet, running in place.
I know you're just doing that. Totally.
I have done that before.
I had a friend who stuck theirs on a stand mixer once.
See, and that's cheating.
Cheating.
Hook it to my dog. That's what I should do. So anyway, one of the other key metrics that I think is really important is energy.
Mm-hmm.
So we've talked about this before about is it a time issue versus an energy issue? And really our workouts and everything that we're doing should be energizing to us. Now there's some things that are exhausting for sure, but if we're not feeling like we have more energy because of what we're doing, more energy to do the things that we love, more energy to live an active lifestyle so that our workouts aren't just kicking our butt and making us so tired that we don't have the energy to live an active lifestyle outside of our 45-minute workout. To me, energy is such a great indicator of where I'm at and whether or not I need to make some adjustments. And energy fluctuates big time from a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. And so like the time change, it always kicks my butt for the first week or so when we have the time change. Either direction for whatever reason. You'd think one of them at least would be energizing, and neither of them seem to be. Both of the times for the first week I feel a little bit more tired, a little bit more sluggish. And so to me that just says, okay, what do I need to do to adjust to help myself get that energy back? And so energy, if you're feeling a lack of energy, changes need to be made. And so look to those 5 patterns and say, what is it in those patterns that I'm missing, that I'm losing energy? I've got an energy leak somewhere. Where can I plug that hole?
Yeah. I like this. We have an infographic that I'll post on this, but I really like this paradigm that I heard on looking at energy, or looking at our day from an energy perspective, and of 0 being no energy and 10 being kind of full energy. And the person said, I used to spend a lot of my time, like I'd take on so many commitments that I was always around that like 1-2 amount of energy left, right? Like I just felt over leveraged, I was redlining. He said, but on the other hand, like just being at 10 all the time, like that wouldn't be emotionally, mentally stimulating, right? Like same thing with exercise, right? If we just sit around all day, we might have more energy in the beginning, but over time, right? Like we end up losing.
The
anyway,
capacity of the battery goes down.
Capacity of the battery goes down. But what he said is like, so we don't want to necessarily be like full 100% energy all the time, because that means that we probably don't have enough resistance in our life. But we also want to be redlining it at that kind of like 0, 1, 2 lane. And so he said, what I started doing is only accepting enough commitments that allowed me to stay kind of like maybe in that 5, 6 range, right? And so obviously it's not, can we, there's some commitments that we can't really get rid of, right? I can't be like, you know what, son, tonight I'm not dad. I'm not dad anymore. We're going to do that commitment away because that's too much energy for me. So, like, here's a box of Play-Doh.
Right. Kids, feed yourselves.
Kids, feed yourselves. And,
free for all.
maybe get a job.
5-year-old.
You can have jobs at 5-year-old, right?
Right. A family job, yeah.
So, obviously, like, there's some commitments that
work in the garden
that we can't do that with. But being really careful about the things that we say yes to. And recognizing that some of the things that we say yes to rob us of way more energy than others. And so just being really careful and conscious about what we're doing and what we're saying yes and no to. And again, I think that the example of Diane comes up again, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I know that this is just going to drop my energy down and is going to get in the way of me being able to get the things done that I want to. And so, like, I know I made this commitment, but let me talk with my husband. And obviously, like, that relationship is good enough to bear that, which is awesome. And it ended up being able to release some of that pressure, right? And give her some of that energy back. And so just looking at your energy in that way, right? What are the things that are going to fill that cup? And those are things like sleep and exercise and fueling well. And what are the things that are going to drain that? And that is things like, big stressors or unmanaged stress. That's things like, I guess the opposite of those good habits, right? Good sleep can fill it. And then bad sleep can drain it.
Right. So the key is when you have life will happen, and you'll have days where it drains more energy.
Absolutely.
There
That's
will
just
be
life.
Yeah, yeah. And so when you have a big drain day or a big drain few hours, it's taking a look at, okay, what can I do within those 5 patterns to recover, repair, recuperate, right? What self-care type things can I do to get some of that energy back? That's a key critical component. It's not that life, you can totally limit everything to being able to be like, I'm going to stay in lane 5 of energy expenditure for the rest of my life.
Every day, yeah.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
Not realistic.
But when I have a lane 8 day or a lane 8 couple of hours of energy expenditure, what can I do to kind of bump down to maybe a lane 2 for a little while? Do something that rejuvenates me, makes me feel whole and full of energy again, so that I can give that energy to the things that I love. That's the key, I guess, with energy, is finding where you can recharge the battery.
And well, I think going back to what we talked about before with energy is that so often we think the issue is a time issue, and we try to manage our time better and space it out and more ideal chunks or do this.
Right.
When really it's about energy management. And if we had the energy, the time would generally take care of itself.
Yeah. Okay, so the last thing is the biometrics. So there are some
actual metrics.
The actual metrics, yeah. There are some biological metrics that we can use to measure progress. Again, they're not that important, any one of them. Together they can help frame a picture, and really what their purpose is to be able to say, am I headed in the right direction, so that I can have those moments. And really the moments are the better measuring stick. The metrics can just help us see, am I trending in the right direction? So some of the things that we like are like HRV, heart rate variability, can be really good. Our body battery, so like Garmin uses a body battery. I love that feature, actually. My stress score, those things can be helpful. They're a little bit more complex. And then some of the basics like resting heart rate and blood pressure. They can be great indicators of our stress level and whether or not we're feeling refreshed and recovered and rejuvenated. So
Yeah. Well, and a lot of, like most phones, I know Apple Health has stuff, Samsung Health has some different things that you can do to like track those stress scores or like track your mood. And just being able to check in and be aware of those things, really, really useful. Heart rate variability, it's literally a measure of how alike are each of your heartbeats to the one before and to the next one, right? And so if our fight or flight system is more activated, then those are going to be a lot more similar, right? Our heartbeat's a lot more regimented.
Right.
And if we have that kind of rest and digest system more active, then there's going to be more variability between those beats. And what that just is it's a good proxy for stress, right? Like how are we managing our body and our internal state?
So yeah, I kind of view it as like your brain can consciously control heart rate, or it can just kind of be chill and going along with the flow. And so I think of heart rate variability as just being like in this chill flow state.
Did I do that right?
Like, yeah, like things are good. We're good. And so I exercise and I control my heart rate for a little bit, but then I let it go and things are good. Versus when I'm kind of always amped up and always stressed out and things like that. You have more of a sympathetic response and things like that. Well, I would say probably either way, sympathetic or parasympathetic. If it's a very strong response either direction, your brain will control biological functions more, which reduces like your overall energy because you're having to control it versus letting it kind of happen naturally. When the brain has to take over functions that normally are kind of in the background, and I think that's why that heart rate variability, it's when the brain's having to take over functions that are normally running in the background. So the more we're just kind of chill, running those things in the background, letting them happen on their own versus having to run them. And so that's why heart rate variability is a good measure. That is a very unscientific version of what heart rate variability is, but we get asked that all the time. But it's just a good measure, and those are all good metrics to see, like, am I trending in the right direction? Am I getting healthier? Or is stress? Most of those are kind of indicators of stress or fatigue. And so metrics that show your energy levels and things like that as well.
But I mean, like we've talked about this on a call before too, right? Heart rate is really responsive to what's happening in the body. And so often people find their heart rate is going like up significantly more than it usually is. and then they get sick.
Yeah.
Right? And so being able to look at things like that and use that data to help you make decisions. That's when the metrics become really useful is, okay, well, what am I going to change based on this, right? Well, okay, I need to manage stress better. Or you know what? I'm kind of feeling under the weather. I'm going to just keep activity a little bit lighter. I'm going to keep moving, but it's not going to be as intense, right? And, maybe I need to drink a little bit more water or, different things like that. Using the data to modify what we're doing on a day-to-day and a week-to-week basis so that, again, we do those small course adjustments and stay headed in the direction that we want.
Right. But if the metrics are stressing you out, then back off of them, maybe.
Then that's another that's another
right
metric that's
off.
Helping you make a decision.
So hopefully that was a helpful review of some of the things that you can do to measure, whether or not you're making progress. So those are kind of the key indicators of whether or not it's working with our 5 patterns. So thanks so much for joining us. It's Thursday, so we've got another call Monday morning, bright and early. And so we'll catch you then. Hopefully you all have a wonderful weekend. You can get out and enjoy the last couple of weeks before the winter really hits. Get out and enjoy the weekend. We'll see you then.
See you then.
Thanks for listening to the Becoming Body Smart podcast. If you have questions, thoughts, or want to continue the conversation, reach out to us on our socials or join our community. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It helps us bring you even more valuable content. Remember, sustainable health is a lifelong journey, and we're here to support you every step of the way. Live longer, live stronger, and become body smart.